Language. A special kind of beauty exists, which is born in language, of language, and for language.
Mrembe kandi.
Abuntia lodwara, abunitinege, aye Turkana account.
Ni muhimu tujue lugha yetu kama wa Kenya.
Mondo gibi Homa Bay County, mondo gicham mbuta, mondo gicham ngege.
But for many, the undisputed language of the city is Sheng. Sheng is a reflection of linguistic complexities that exist in Nairobi and other major towns like Kisumu, Eldoret, Mombasa, and also Nakuru, where Kiswahili and English and other mother tongues interact in a complex and an unstable manner, rising to code switching and random language shifting and also random language mixing. Taking a bird's eye view of the busy Majengo slums, probably the oldest of the slums in the country, the old rusty dilapidated roofs have seen better days, but it is here in the middle of Eastlands that is believed to have been the spawning ground of Sheng.
Hii Sheng inakamjilia tabu. Mnakula tabu mpaka yani unakuta yani unaambia mtu hata mambo haiko jilia problem.
Kutokelezea ndio jina iko sahihi. Ameshika down.
Sasa hii kutokelezea ilikuwa ya kubafu ama ilikuwa wimbo ama ilitokezea pia hapa kije?
Hiyo wimbo alitoa kupitia hizi amesikia. Yani unajua pia mawimbo wanatoga wanafanya research kulingana na vile venye kunaenda hii generation ya saa hii. Sasa hiyo ngoma alisikia ni venye tu ukiwa kutokelezea na maanisha umeng'ara kama wewe sasa hivi umetokelezea. Umeshika down. Sasa umeshika down sasa umetokelezea. Sasa
ile latest Sheng unataka kujua kutokelezea tu ndio umekama up na kutokelezea. Siku hizi matri bado ni matri ama kuna nganya. Hadi matri inaitwaje?
Nganya yani kitu mpya, kitu imesimama.
Kwa hivyo si matri ni nganya.
Ni nganya sasa. Ama wangora.
Sio unaweza sema pia injumu ni nganya. Imesimama. Injumu imeshika down. Sasa hizi sema ati njumu ni nganya, nasema hii njumu imeshika down.
Kama mrembo wako smart, unasema huo mrembo ameshika chini, ametokelezea yani.
So
nimetokelezea mbaya.
While the ideal role of language in any given society is to be able to serve as many speakers as possible, the Sheng language appears to be limited from one estate to another. In California, where the genge kind of music pride its roots, people have different views about Sheng.
Ila Sheng na generation zake, kama saiza watoto hawezi elewa kitu yoyote.
Even politicians are beginning to reason that if you're going to reach the youth, you could as well speak their language.
Najitolea kuwa prezo juu nataka kutoa hii nchi yetu kwa siasa za tene na za ukabila.
Language experts still face the Herculean task of finding out how they can embrace the Sheng in their curriculum.
I must admit that the English levels for our students in school are not as high. And the Swahili levels are also not as high. But I kind of think Swahili has always been higher, even as compared to English. And I think it is the ease with which perhaps after school they get into Sheng. When they get an opportunity, they get into Sheng. Therefore, they are not able to develop the communication skills of English and Swahili real adequately. At least it has some impact.
People have advocated that the growth of Sheng is an indication of societal growth in Kenya, including scholars, educationists, and students are of a very different opinion that the spread of this code impacts negatively on the learners in the Kenyan universities and colleges.
Nimejoiniwa na mabeste wangu Jose, Sejo na Kelvo. Sasa
Poa sana.
How am I doing so far?
Una try.
A for effort.
Yeah.
Sejo, karibu AM Live.
Asante sana.
Habari ya asubuhi wase.
Tuko fiti.
Asanteni sana.
Nimebambika sana kukam.
Asante. Kabla tuanze, niko na words 2-3 hivi nataka mniambie kama ni Sheng. Viwege Jeng. na Kagege. So niambie, please.
Kagege hiyo ni yako, hiyo ni kisap. Hiyo sijaisikia.
Okay.
Kagege. Wegejeng inaweza I think inategemea na context. Wegejeng kuna wase huitumia kumaanisha burungo, unajua kiwegejeng kyangu kitei.
What?
Kitei
Kiburungo.
Kiburungo.
Okay.
Wegejeng pia inaweza tumiwa kumaanisha vitu unspeakable.
Okay.
Tuko kwa TV.
Okay, so tuanze tu kutoka mwanzo. Sheng ilitokelezea wapi?
Well, Sheng imetoka far. Tumedu research studies kadhaa kujaribu kufind out Sheng ilianzia wapi. Imeanzia as far back as 1940s.
Really?
1940s. But malili nawiri sasa.
Yes.
Ni hapa 1950s ukiingia 60s hapo. Vile Reru ilikuwa inajengwa, walikuwa na need watu. Unajua Afrika kubeba zile machuma nini, ndo nasikia landi mawe landi. Sasa vile wadhi walikamu walikuwa nadunga hapa hivi jiji. Sasa Waafrika walikuwa nadunga Ololo, Kongo, hizo sekta.
Kevo nipeleke pole please. Peleke pole. Tuko wengi mazee hata tu understand.
Ololo ni Kaloleni.
Kaloleni, haya pole nipeleke pole.
So ilianza hizo sekta. Ilianza hizo sekta and then sasa ikagrow kutoka hapo. Mat pia zilisaidia sana kuspread. Juu najicheki sasa makonkodi wa kutoka Island walikuwa na kama wanapatana wadi wametoka Ongwaro, wametoka Motherland, wanapatana jiji, kuna ile mix ya language na culture. Ikasaidia kuspread. Kuingia hapo 90s FM stations ikatokea. So unajua sasa broadcast sasa tenje nafikia wadi wengi. Alafu hapo katikati ya hiyo story ya MFM ngoma ikatokea sasa. Kina Kalamashaka wakianza kurap na Sheng, wakaanza kuspread hiyo language. Sasa ukikuja matutao hapa za technology, unajua siku hizi tunavutia na nangos, tunachapia na WhatsApp.
Pole. Maybe Seju utanipeleka pole kushinda Kevu kiasi. Wewe niambie maisha yako. Ulianza kupenda Sheng lini na kwa nini?
Actually mimi nimegrow nayo since nikuwa mpienga. Ile age nilikuwa napata ikiwa mbele yangu. Tuseme maybe mabro zangu waso ama mabeste zangu waso walikuwa na bonga Sheng. Na mimi nikigrow up nilikuwa na get already na exist. So mimi nikaanza kuadapt. Most of the time huwezi kunashinda tina paru. Ulikuwa unashinda na mabeste.
Ndio.
So ukishinda na mabeste unaadapt ile kitu wanatumia kuongea. Alafu unapata place tuligrowia haikuwa ni tribe moja. Kulikuwa na ma different tribes. Na hizo tribe tofauti definitely hakuna venye mimi ningeongea tribe yangu na unge tribe yako to get kuelewana. So tulikuwa tuna have kutumia ile language tunaweza elewana. Na hiyo language ya kuelewana ni kumix hizi different tribes. So unaweza pata maybe tumeka place alafu kacheki kitu ka rat me cross. Utatumia language yako unaweza sema cheki hiyo yeyo imepita. So mse mwenye ajue yeyo ni nini, since umemshow na amecheki kipita, definitely atajua hiyo ni rat.
Fanya ni yeyo. Yeah.
So ikakam hivyo na nikaget ku understand hivyo. So nimegrow nayo tu hivyo. Chuo the same, unapata wase kutoka area different. Tukiwa sports unapata wase wametoka mtaa tofauti wanakam na Sheng yao, then unakam kuiadapt and then
the rest is history, as they say. Ukifikiria vile tuligrow, especially generation yetu, ukiongea Sheng kwa hao kwanza kai kwa wageni, what? Ama shule in front kwa udaru in front of your teacher. It was madness, right? Because it was actually coined as almost a rebellious language. Tell me a little bit about that history. Tupeleke why did it have such a negative connotation? And today it's something that's actually celebrated.
Yeah. I think going back a bit in time.
Oh, thank God. Thank gosh, we're speaking English now.
No, kilami pia iko. Kilami pia naweza get.
Angusha kilami. Oh, thank you.
Okay, going back a bit in time, there's a period where it emerged as a language. And there are many reasons that contributed into why Sheng emerged as a language. He's mentioned the mix of cultures around a particular place, institution, schools, and that. But also, there was the aspect of, as kids, when you're growing up, you know, during the day, maybe holidays, you're out doing your adventures, as we used to call them, you know. But when you come back home, you want to recount your stories, but you don't want your parents to hear about what you're speaking about. So you have to find a way of telling your stories without your parents knowing what it was. So from that kind of scenario, Sheng can be looked at as a bit of a rebellious language. And then when you come now into the late 80s, mid-90s, the huge catalysts of Sheng, the matatu culture, the matatu conductors and everyone, they were looked at as riffraffs, you know, and they were attributed to the language. So that kind of gave the attitude that it had. But the truth of the matter is that it was a language and a culture that was there to stay. It's still here and it's not going anywhere. That's the truth of the matter. So it's come miles, as you say, because now we see corporates, multinationals using it in the advertising language, using it to reach out in the political arena. The government is using Sheng, NGOs are using Sheng. So we've finally come to accept it as a language that's here to stay. Okay. If you go back to the history of any of these languages, English started as a Sheng of its own in its time. Swahili was also a bastard language at some point.
If you look back into biblical times,
yes,
and you look back to how languages were formed and how languages even were derived from other languages,
yes.
It's very interesting. But lazima niulize, Kiswahili ni kilugha kitamu. Kwanza ukienda pwani, you know, ni kilugha kitamu. Sheng, can you say Sheng has corrupted in a way? Because there's some people who can argue that Sheng has corrupted Swahili. Or is it us, the speakers, who then have sort of mixing it? Swanglish, nini una ketoero, hapo ndani unakoroga kila kitu. Does that have any sort of negative effect on such a beautiful language that's taken almost a century to develop?
Asante sana, ningependa kuchukulia swali hilo kibinafsi. Kwa sababu mara nyingi huwa tunasema mambo ambayo hayana msingi. Kitu cha kwanza ni kwamba lugha yoyote, ili wewe mwenyewe uwe tuseme makini katika lugha, lazima wewe mwenyewe ukuwe na ile roho ya kujua lugha. Lazima wewe mwenyewe ukuwe na watu ambao unaongea nao ile lugha. Ushaelewa? Kwa hivyo sasa unapata kama lugha kama Kiswahili kama haina waongelezaji, wanaitwaje?
Wazungumzaji.
Ndio basi.
Atamshi.
Bado tumeiva.
But yes, so unapata kwamba mimi sijaona mtu hata mmoja ambaye amesahau lugha ya mama kwa sababu alijifundisha Kizungu ama alijifundisha Kiswahili ama alijifundisha Sheng. Lugha ni kama vile utaichukulia. Wengi wetu darasani tutafundishwa kusema kiti hiki. Lakini nikiwa pale nyumbani ama nikiongea nawe nitasema ni hii kiti. Tayari nishakiharibu kile lugha. Ushaelewa? Lugha ni kuongea. Ukiangalia kama wale wakazi wa pwani, zile sehemu ambazo wanaongea Kiswahili kwa wingi, unapata kwamba Kiswahili chao cha kuongea ni Kiswahili nzuri sana. Lakini kuja kwa kukiandika tofauti. Pale kuna changamoto. Unapata kwamba Maranda yaishinda Mombasa katika Swahili. Kwa hivyo pale Sheng iko wapi pale katikati?
Okay, yes, Kiswahili chako ni kisanifu sana.
Sejo. Naweza sema ni
changia.
Ile kitu imemake maybe tuseme ati maybe Swa ama Sheng imecorrupt Kiswahili ama kitu kama hiyo. Ni the way tunabonga. Kuna ile kushrab na imeplay role big sana because unaweza get word kama karao. Kuna wasa wanasema karao na kuna wasa wanasema karao. So kuna difference. So nikitoka hapa niishi place nyingine, niende nisheme hiyo word. Hawa sort wako wanajua hiyo word inamaanisha hivyo. So akikuja tao atakuwa anakuja tao akishema hiyo word. Na hiyo word akikuja tao tutakuwa tunaona, "Ai, boss. Hatusemagi hivyo."
Aishikanishi.
Hatuelewi unasema nini. But yeye venye ameielewa ni actually si kupenda kwake, but ni a slip of tongue.
Ndio.
Mdomo iliteleza tu. Akaisema tu hivi.
Exactly.
So hiyo inaweza kuimechangia sana maybe change hizo na make Sheng na change na Kiswahili na change.
Okay. Yes. Ukiangalia Sheng vile umesema kutoka 40s mpaka 90s, alafu ukiangalia Sheng ya the 21st century. Ni Sheng tofauti sana, and especially Sheng ya Mada. I don't know if you guys know about Madaraka. Madaraka here in Nairobi is a place by itself. Yeah, they speak their own language. It's its own little city. Lakini Sheng imedevelop sana, especially in the last like decade. Niambie vile Sheng metamorphosize and why?
Sheng has like any language, it emerged from a particular area. So the factors around that area influence the language. Unapata in the early days of Sheng, there was a lot of Orifo, Odijo, Olaso, Oduko.
There was
a lot of O or influence because of the environment that it was coming in from. And then when you come now into the 90s, no, there was a bit of mix, there was a bit of change in it. Again, like you mentioned, different areas have different Sheng. You know, Kwanja in Ongwaro is Chapa in Dandora. So, you know,
right.
I mean, all these words that are in Sheng, and actually part of the work that we do, we run the largest online dictionary, sheng.co.ke, with over 8,000 words. And part of what we do is we try to find out not just a word and its meaning, but, sorry, I'll have to refer to this because I don't have...
That's okay.
But the area of origin, the first year it was around, the meaning, the synonyms.
Okay.
You know,
Yes.
and on the side there's a bit more to that. There's etymology, there's usage in a sentence.
Here it is.
You
I'm
know.
just going to show this to my cameraman, all right? What he was just referring
so
to.
this, for us, this is a dictionary. It's a t-shirt dictionary.
Nice, we love it.
So it's
okay.
a dictionary. So it kind of, so this is, for example, Buddha, but I mean, it can be done with any other word, you know, from the area of origin. So nobody knows where Buddha came from. If somebody knows, please log in and let us know
where Buddha came from. Okay.
Yeah.
So you'll tell us a little bit, something very interesting, how you can add a word to Sheng Nation. Lakini Patricia yuko kwa line anangoja kuongelesha.
I know.
Sasa Patricia.
Mzuri sana.
Habari ya asubuhi?
Yangu sio mbaya, habari yenu?
Mzuri sana. Salimia wageni wangu tafadhali.
Hi guys.
Hi Patricia.
Hi.
Poa sana.
You have a question or comment, darling?
I have more of a comment and a concern.
Go ahead.
I'm a high school teacher. I teach English.
Okay.
And as much as we appreciate the evolution of Sheng, we know that people have to embrace different languages.
Yes.
I'm impressed that Kevin can speak both fluent Kiswahili and both and English.
Yes, and Sheng.
Yeah, and Sheng too. But the thing is, not all students or young people understand the importance of embracing English and Kiswahili first.
Right.
Before now they learn Sheng, or maybe at the same time, all at the same time.
Very good point.
As teachers in school, we've seen that Sheng has sort of negatively influenced essay writing, insha writing, and even answering of exams. So how can you advise young people, what do you advise young people that it is important to learn English and Kiswahili? As Sheila said earlier in the morning.
Yes.
It is important for students or young people to be told.
Absolutely.
That the first thing they should learn is English and Kiswahili because it's what will help them in their schoolwork, and it's also what will help them in the job market. Because I don't think there's anyone who'll ever hire you for speaking proper Sheng.
All right, okay. What can you say to Teacher Patricia? Stay on the line,
Teacher
Thank
Patricia,
you for that point.
Thank you so much for calling in. You raise a number of questions, and I'm going to kind of, this conversation, this debate has gone on for a long time, and we've tried as much as we can to put it to rest. The first thing is that for many Kenyans, the first language, for at least our generation and at least the generation behind us, the first language is Sheng. I'm sorry. But for us, my parents used to speak to me in mother tongue, and when I was playing outside, I used to speak in Sheng. So by default, by the time I'm stepping into an English class, I'm already speaking Sheng. You know, that has to be taken into consideration. The effect of Sheng on English and Swahili is not connected. There's no single research study that I have read, and I kind of have been looking for one, that shows a direct relation between Sheng speaking that affects English or Swahili. There have been many factors attributed to the failing standards of English and Swahili, including the teaching styles, including the reading culture that is fading. I mean, for me, I could write very good English, but I couldn't speak it up until I was, I think in Form 2 is when I actually started, you know, being oral with English. Why? Because I now found, I think, the class or the school where I could express myself and learn from that. So there are many other factors. Before we just heap on blame onto Sheng, there are many other factors. That being said, I think we just need to look at how we are teaching these languages, because one language has never spoiled another language. I don't think that has ever happened. I know people who speak 7, 8, 9 languages, and French doesn't affect how you speak Spanish. You know, so it's just, I think it's again how the language is presented, the interest that the students have in learning the language, and for language you have to speak it to learn it.
Okay, Patricia, while you're on the line,
I agree with Kevin.
Okay.
I agree with the sentiment, but what is it that he did so that he's able to speak all languages fluently? Because as much as there are no researches that have been done,
yes,
on the ground we've seen students who think Sheng is more cooler and than speaking proper English and Kiswahili. So what exactly did he do? Or what can he advise students because they're not embracing? Maybe times have changed since he was in school.
Right.
Yeah, well,
So what did he do in school that made him stand out, that he's able to speak all languages fluently? Because what we are seeing in our schools now is people embracing Sheng or other informal languages, funny language, than they do.
I think, Patricia, and I think what his defense is that there's nothing wrong with that, right? Isn't that what you're trying to say?
Yes.
Is that students, there's nothing wrong with that, which I then have to bring up a point. For you, Patricia, as a teacher, if a student answers questions in Sheng, for example, in an insha, what is your position?
We do tell them that is improper.
Okay.
But it is so
and they'll
chronic.
get deducted marks for it.
Yeah, they will get deducted marks for it. But it is chronic because it's a culture that is really in them. And again, it depends. Not all students are, in Mangu High. We deal with students who even are from Ushago.
Yeah.
They're being taught English and now they have that Sheng. They interact with people, like they were saying, they interact with people from modern communities or urban communities. And so they feel like it's cooler to embrace that language. So I would like him to advise, what did he do in high school? What can I tell them? That because I've told them, you need the basic languages. You need English, you need Kiswahili for your exams and also for your future life out there.
Okay. Thank you, Patricia.
Teacher Patricia, the first thing I'd advise you to do is take away their phones, take away their laptops and computers and give them books.
They don't need those.
Because the thing is, I don't know about the current syllabus and curriculum and what is there, but what I know is that we used to read a lot. We used to have our Mills and Boons, our Archie and Sabrinas, our Tintin, our Asterix. We used to have all these novels, that we kept on reading, and that kind of built our vocabulary, built our love and our passion for the language. So with the language, as with any subject, you have to have an interest to study it. For me, I learned Swahili in school because it was compulsory. If I'd had a choice, I'd have stayed away from it. But I had no choice. It was compulsory. But again, at some point, I kind of felt the need to develop interest in the language. When I realized that, well, there's a bigger world than Nairobi. So I kind of developed an interest, listened to East Africa TV, whatever that was, listened to radio programs, just to build your vocabulary, read. But the thing is, students just need to read.
It's a difficult, big debate. Patricia, we'll keep your number because I think this is certainly a debate that we must have on this show.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your point, because absolutely, it does come to a place where we would love for the world to be a certain way. But the reality out there is that yes, many MDs, CEOs, human resource departments will not hire you. Umekuja tu kuangusha matrack kwa interview.
Let me give you a point. Let me give you a point. At Sheng Nation, we have 12 members of staff.
Okay.
7 of them are graduates. 4 of them are pursuing their master's degrees.
Wow.
Yeah. So and for us, one of the requirements when you're coming in is, do you know Sheng?
Right.
You can't be coming to work for Sheng Nation if you don't know
Sheng.
Yeah. So again, like I say, Sheng is a culture, is a language. It's something that you learn and you grow into, but it doesn't stop you from being anything else you want to be.
Of course.
Yeah.
Okay. Sheng.co.ke.
Yes.
Dictionary.
Yes.
Iko na words ngapi? 8,000.
8,000.
Tell me about development ya hii platform na why it's important for you guys to have a dictionary. Sejo?
Why to have dictionary ni ku express ile language wasa wanaweza ji-express freely. Na place unaweza get word, unaweza sikia word ama unaweza sikia music. Usikie music imekubamba, and then all of a sudden amesema maybe sentence ama word yenye huelewi, but music yenyewe ni poa. Like ingoma ya like kona, hatujuagi inamaanisha nini. But music yenyewe ni interesting. Unataka kujua anamaanisha nini. So purpose ya dictionary iko na something interesting about the dictionary ama the site, kuna place ya lyrics, and then hizo lyrics ziko kwa site. So in case kuna any word ya Sheng, ita highlight. So kaa kuna word yote uelewi, then uta click tu kwa word, and then itakushow the meaning of the word na everything.
Okay.
Yes.
How can I get viwege Jeng, kagege, words zangu zote zile wasi wanakanga wakidinai hapa kwa show? How can I get them on this dictionary?
Very simple. You log on to sheng.co.ke. You register as a member. All you need is an email address. You have a profile. Once you log in, you have a profile. You can put all the other details.
Yeah.
The site, you also put in your mtaa. And the site will suggest for you friends, people from your mtaa who are also members on the site.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So then you go and put in a word. You put in the word, you put in the meaning, you put in the other details. If you have them, if you don't, you can leave them. And then you select the number of people you want to, will vote for the word.
Right.
You know, and what happens is if they are members on the site, they get emails. We used to do text, but that kind of got a bit expensive. So they get an email saying that Kobe has added a word on the site, Viwege Jeng. Go vote for it.
Yeah.
So they log in, they look at the word. If it means yes, they'll vote for it. If it's no, they'll say Z. You know,
I exist. What? I exist.
Yes.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, and that's how we build it. So it gives us a system of verification so that people just don't come up with their words. The international standard is that a language has to be spoken by about 15 people to be recognized as a language.
Yeah.
So by default, we'll ask for 15. But if you have more than 15, the better.
Okay.
Yeah. So that is what happens.
I have to ask you both something. I mean, the kind of research, and you've talked about your team, and you've got this publication, right? And you're getting a lot of tweets, actually.
Thank you.
Mathri inaitwa flight. Sikujua.
Yes.
Mathri inaitwa flight.
Inaweza kwa flight, and then also flight inaweza kwa ni bus fare.
Bus fare.
Nige bus fare. All right. I'm learning new things.
Ferrari, mama flight.
All right. So you have this publication that took you 2 years?
A year and a half.
A year and a half? Tell me a little bit about the sort of research going behind, you've told me about your team, the sort of research that goes on behind the scenes in ensuring that teachers like Patricia, linguistics professors in our universities, the government can really start to realize that Sheng is just not going anywhere. And it's time that we start to embrace it rather than keep giving it this negative stereotype.
That particular research was, we call it Tracing the Roots of Sheng, and women's contribution to it. It was a research done across 5 towns in Kenya, and we kind of just we were seeking to find out where exactly where did Sheng start from? Why did it merge? What are the catalysts? What are the factors of growth? And some of them I mentioned earlier, you know, all that. So we kind of put that into a publication like that. There's a second part that we're doing that will have a bit more depth than the first part. But basically what we found out, I can say, for example, we got a key informant, a 65-year-old guy who's been born and raised in Sheng. You know, Sheng is his first and last language. He speaks good English, he speaks good Swahili, he's traveled and lived outside the country. But for him, Sheng is it. You know, for him, Sheng is his language. And he brought out aspects that people don't understand. Like, for example, back in the day, all the estates used to have something called a social hall. And the social hall was where young people used to go and hang out.
I remember.
Yeah, and there were things like boxing, things like darts. Now, because of these sports, they used to compete, mtas. Now, when, for example, a boxer from this side is boxing another one from another mtaa, they used to have a language where they can give him tips when he's in the ring, you know, kule mengo, you know, things like that. So those are some of the things that catalyzed the growth of Sheng. The reason why we are doing the dictionary is to preserve and demystify Sheng. Because preserving a culture, if you don't document it, a language, it gets lost, it disappears. That's how we are losing some old languages of the world, because nobody has documented. So we are preserving and demystifying it, making it edible to anyone. You know, you're trying to remove the mystery behind it, and it's not just a language for the riffraff. We all speak Sheng. You know, mbao mbao, when the conductor is saying mbao mbao tao, and we all get into the mat knowing that it is 20 bob. Right. Nobody asks, mbao ni?
Maybe Sheila.
Yeah, well, you know,
Sheila.
she kind of like comes from the other side. You know.
So we understand. I have a Jungu friend who speaks Sheng.
Yeah.
Kabisa, full KC, anaweza kuangusha matracks uogope. All right, umeniletea?
Yeah, tumekuletea tisho. This is part of sustainability model.
Yay!
Yeah, so we kind of create this merchandise again on the line of T-shirt dictionary. So for this is these are all words related to, well, a girl. You know, Denda, Imbus, Mroro, Totois, Babe, Spleng,
Chipechepe, Chipipi, sorry.
Chipipi, Manzi, Nguna, Mtoto,
Shore.
Jada.
Dendai.
Yep, so inside there is a t-shirt.
Look at this. This is fantastic.
And tumeletea Sheila, lakini sasa sijui Sheila.
Sheila unong okay, tutamfundisha words 5 leo. Quiver nayo.
Wait, where's mine?
Hii nayo ilitoka wapi?
Quiver.
Here.
Quiver, hebu Sheila kam. Hii quiver hii nayo.
Umenitaja karibu
kila kitu inaishana nayo.
Again, it's just a trend. It happened as a trend at that particular time, and it was picked up.
Like
But it mean kwa Kiswahili tunaweza ita msisitizo.
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 Haya. Hebu fundisha Sheila word moja. Moja tu ya kukaa tu na
nimesoma. Hebu
shika Sheila hii ni yako. Unaweza daka.
Kuna food hapa ndani.
Ama bamba. Daka hiyo.
What is that?
When you wakati 1940.
Boy, unatukana mimi na nimesimama hapa.
Wakati.
All right. Sawa. So Sejo, fundisha Sheila word moja kabla tuchukue break.
Word moja.
Word tu moja.
Naweza kufundisha jina
Tortoise.
When tortoise umestand. Umesimama juu. Uko juu.
Mzee Gobe unaniita Mzee Gobe nimesimama hapa.
Wacha kwa chini. Kuja on top. Kuja ini Sheng Nation. Tortoise yani mtoto ameiva, mtoto amesimama. Mtoto ako juu ya
I know I can stand it. Lakini have you seen a tortoise before it stands up?
Okay, there you have it. Guys, thank you so much for being here this morning.
Thank you for having us.
I'm more educated. I actually love Sheng a lot more than I did before I woke up today. Asante sana.
Thank you
Kelvo,
so much.
Sejo, salimianeni huko Sheng Nation.
Wasalimie sana. Yes, wagote.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. All right. We'll be right back. Remember, I'm over here. Remember, our trend of the day is #heritage. Let's embrace our own and love our uniqueness. We'll be right back after this.